an honor and a privilege to be speaking to you today. My name is Thandeka, and I'm a scientist from Zimbabwe. I grew up in Bulawayo, and I went to Girls College for my high school. And now today I live in South Africa, where I conduct my research. So my current profession, the official term is a senior medical scientist, and I'm based in Johannesburg at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. And what I do there is I look at HIV and more recently COVID-19 research. We focus on looking at antibodies. So we look at the immune system, and a special part of the immune system is the antibody response. And antibodies are pretty cool things because they're able to help you prevent disease. They're able to help you fight disease. And yeah, they're very important parts of your immune system. If you don't have antibodies, you're pretty much not in a good place. So on a typical day, I go to the lab. The first thing I usually do is make a cup of tea and check my emails because trust me, in science, there are emails and emails on emails. We're always talking to each other, we're always communicating, we're always collaborating and having new ideas. The next thing that I'll probably go and do is set up an experiment. So of course, any scientist, you've watched any science show, you go into your white lab coat, you have all your pipettes and everything ready, and you set up this crazy experiment. And it looks so glamorous. Some days aren't as glamorous as they are on TV, but some days are pretty cool. We find some really interesting things, we do some really interesting research, and I guess the aim of it is to help, to inform on policy, to inform on new medicines and new vaccines, and that's what we really aim to do. So after setting up my experiments for the day, there's also other aspects that we do. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. You have to plan what you're going to do next, what your next experiment is, what's the next big question. And you also have to be writing. So there's no point me doing experiments but not sharing it with the world. So we write publications, which we then send out for peer review. People look at them and say, oh, okay, that's interesting stuff. And then it gets published and everyone can see it. But my favorite part is that no day is the same. Every day there's a different challenge, there's something that I'm doing, there's troubleshooting, something that doesn't make sense, and now I need to figure it out. I'm always thinking, I'm always using my brain, and I think that's the best part. There's nothing routine about it, there's nothing sit down at a desk all day. It's move, 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 and the biggest muscle you're moving is that brain of yours. So if that's the type of person that you are, then science is definitely for you. So just to speak a little bit about what I do and why I find it so interesting is, as I said, I've been looking at HIV from about 2013. That's where my research has been focused. And since the last year, we've moved into COVID research. But what ties it together is looking at the antibody response. And what we want to do is develop and help develop both HIV vaccine and now recently helping with understanding the different COVID vaccines. So we're really doing relevant things that are applicable to people, especially on the African continent and the world as a whole. So science is so broad, you can go into any sphere and answer questions that are unanswered. And trust me, there are a lot. In every single field, you'll find that there are questions that are waiting for you to answer. So how did I get here? What education did I have to pursue to actually become a scientist? Well, my route was, I think I'm not like everyone else. Other people have different ways of going about it, but I've always known that I'm interested in the sciences, and the form that it took I only started carving that out at university. But from high school, I did know that I wanted to be in the sciences. So for A level, I did biology, chemistry, mathematics, and then we had to choose a fourth A level subject, and I chose physical education, which was actually really good because with that you can go into biokinetics, ergonomics, so it's actually not something to laugh at. It's actually a very serious subject. And then I went on to Rhodes University, which is in Grahamstown, and I studied my undergrad. So in first year, I was very confused. I knew I wanted to be sort of in the sciences, but I didn't know exactly where. So I did your biologies and your chemistries, but then I took tangent, and I did geography, and I did anthropology, because I thought maybe I should be in the earth sciences. But by the end of first year, I knew I was firmly rooted in more of the biology side of it. So that's where I pursued and carried on, doing microbiology, biochemistry. I then this was a 4-year degree where the last year is an honors. and I did my honors in biochemistry, and I looked at malaria research. After that, I realized, and that I guess I was kind of tired of being at Rhodes. It's a small town. I wanted something new. I wanted a different challenge. And I also wanted to get into HIV research. And the type of research I wanted to get into wasn't offered where I was. So I had to look elsewhere. So I applied to UCT and I got in. And at that time, I needed to find a scholarship. And I think that's really important to say that if you want to get a scholarship to further your career and further your learning in science, the one thing they look at is really good grades. So you need to work extremely hard, and you need to say, look, I'm going to push and get really, really good grades to get that scholarship. But having said that, there are a lot of scholarships. So for example, the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship, for example, which you can take in South Africa, or the Rhodes Scholarship, which you can take abroad to Oxford, for example. They're not looking only at good grades, but they're also looking at a well-rounded person. Are you volunteering? Are you doing other activities? Do you have a life? And those are the things that they're looking at. So don't only be focused on your grades. There's more to life than grades. Go on and do other things. And there with that came in an email. So I'll just switch off my email while I do this. So so then I landed up at UCT, and that's where I did my master's and my PhD in immunology, focusing on HIV vaccine research. From then on, I came here to the NICD, and that's where I've been looking again HIV research, again looking at the vaccine side of it, but now I was a postdoctoral fellow. So I think one thing they don't tell you after you get a PhD is what do you do, So there are a lot of avenues. You can continue in research, and you can do a postdoc, they call it, which is a postdoctoral fellowship, where you finish your PhD and now you're getting seriously into academia, and that's the route that I took. Or you can go into more of industry, so you can work at a company that actually develops products, for example. Realistically, in Africa, there are not a lot of opportunities for industry, which is sad, but slowly and surely it is coming up, and a lot of people are starting up startups, and it's an exciting space to watch, but there's not a lot of variety in terms of industry, but it definitely is there. You can also do something like a master's in public health, for example, and go into health policies. So the scientists, we do the work, we publish the papers, and then policymakers look at it and say, oh, okay, the scientists have said that if you, take your ARVs and, if you've got HIV, for example, and now you are undetectable when you do an HIV test, it means that you're not able to transmit. So now they can start making policies around that, right? Or, okay, as soon as you're infected with HIV, scientists say that you should now start ARVs because that gives you a better sort of prognosis as you go. Again, as a policymaker, you can go and say, okay, government, this is a policy now for anyone who tests should be put on treatment immediately if they consent. So there's a lot of avenues you can do within the sciences. You don't necessarily have to be in academia, although sometimes it's easier. So then, I guess, have I always been a scientist? Have I always sort of gone this route? I would say yes, with a few deviations, which are still within the sciences. So during my PhD, I worked as a communications officer for Immunopedia website. So this is actually an immunology learning website. It has learning resources, and I did interviews and I wrote news stories, and again, it was within science, but more science communication. And it was a great, great experience. I got to work on my writing skills. I got to work on my interpersonal skills. And it's something that broadened my horizons a lot. So I would, again, definitely say, don't only stick to your books, but go elsewhere, venture elsewhere. During my time at Rhodes, I volunteered at teaching maths and English at a junior school in the Joza Township. And I loved it again. It was, again, breaking out from just saying I'm going to study and that's all I'm going to do, but being more of a well-rounded person and giving back. There's no point getting all this education and then never giving back, right? And even now, I do continue to give back. We have sort of high school outreaches, doing this, talking to you guys, hoping to, even if I can motivate one person to say, you know what, I want to be a scientist. And this girl who looks 12 years old and has braces, she can do it, so can I. So, some advice if you're interested to get into the field. I would say have passion. You know, as I said before, not every experiment is glamorous. Not every day is glamorous. Sometimes I work until 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the evening. I'm exhausted, but I know I have to push. And the only thing that pushes me at those moments is the passion and knowing that I'm doing it because I love it, because I enjoy it. When you are a scientist, it's not just a job that you have, it's a career that you're building. It's your lifestyle, it's part of you. So you have to have the passion for it. And sometimes it's hard to separate your work from who you are, which you definitely should, but it becomes so ingrained in one thing and it becomes so part of you that if you don't have the passion for it, you won't be able to push it further. So definitely have the passion for it. But I mean, if I hadn't worked hard and got good grades, I wouldn't have got a scholarship or afforded to be able to continue, right? And so work hard, give it your all. If you want to be at the top of your game, you have to be at the top of your game. So work for it and don't give up. But as I said before, be that well-rounded person. If you enjoy your sports, you carry on with your sports. If you have your passions, do it. Have hobbies. Don't be that person who just says, this is my work, this is it, I'm just going to study it when I get to university. Have hobbies, have a life, do something interesting. The one thing I enjoy is gardening. So I have my little veggie garden. And when I'm there, I'm just de-stressing, I'm letting loose. And it's something that you need to do. And it might be a more exciting hobby. You might like hiking or doing this or that, but don't neglect it. And I think the last thing that I would say is, I guess the question was posed of who do I admire? And I won't say one person, but I'll say the type of person that I admire. And someone who has perseverance, someone who never gives up, and someone who pushes through the pain, someone who's always working hard to improve themselves and just, yeah, someone who just never is so resilient, never gives up. And I think that's something that we should all have inside of us, to work as hard as we can, to push our passions, to make sure that we achieve our goals. But also, having said that, there's some things in life where you have a certain goal and it doesn't go the way that you thought it would go, and that's fine. And things change, and that's okay. Don't be hard on yourself. Things can change and things can evolve, and that's just life and that's just growing. So go with it, enjoy it, and it's just all a process. So yeah, finally, if you have any questions, if you want to contact me about anything to do with science, as broad or as narrow as you want it to be, I don't mind. You can email me on thandekam@nicd.ac.za. So that's thandekam@nicd.ac.za. So yeah, I'm here to chat. Thank you for your time.